You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and political commentator Benedict Spence. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Rishi Sunak D-Day controversy leads the Financial Times weekend edition with the headline, Sunak accused of handing gift to reform by skipping D-Day event. It's the same lead story in the Eye, where it says the Tories are in despair over a gaffe which they fear could destroy their election hopes. According to Susie's paper, The Mirror, that's already happened. The headline, it's over. The Guardian says grassroots party members have reacted with fury. While The Times carries tonight's criticism of Mr Sunak by Commons leader Penny Mordaunt, who called his actions completely wrong. As for the election itself, The Telegraph reports that the Prime Minister is planning to axe stamp duty for first-time home buyers. The Mail carries the latest on a missing TV doctor and one of its own columnists, Michael Mosley, in Greece, asking if he may have taken what the paper calls a wrong turn to disaster. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and political commentator Benedict Spence. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with the story on many of the front pages, and that is the D-Day commemorations fiasco, as was, because Rishi Sunak returned early. How's it being handled in tomorrow's newspapers, Susie?
Gosh, it hasn't gone away. It's not going to go away. I mean, if it gets to the point where a D-Day veteran says you've let your country down, it's pretty much game over for anybody. And if there wasn't a general election going on, there would be letters of no confidence going in to the Prime Minister at this point. And there's a couple of things here which is worth unpacking a little bit. So the fact that the FT here is saying that this is a gift to reform, the idea that support for our military is purely a right-wing phenomenon and that left-wing voters, Labour voters, older people of all types, younger people of all political persuasions do not support D-Day veterans and armed forces in general is mad, is not just handing a gift to reform. He's handed a gift to Keir Starmer. He handed a great political gift to him of having the photograph taken with Zelensky and of not having his picture with the world leaders. He's handed a moral gift to whoever his opponents are in any seat in the country. Stephen McGann, who's in Call the Midwife, said on Twitter earlier on that, you know, his granddad spent more time on the beach than Rishi Sunak did at the thing. And it may not be accurate, I don't know, but everybody's granddad has probably passed across that beach or could have passed across that beach or knows someone who passed across that beach. And that applies to so many people from so many different walks of life. Rishi Sunak's managed to insult a broad range of human beings from different demographics. It's not just a thing for reform. It's not just something Nigel... And that's why Penny Mordaunt had to go in that debate today and immediately, minute one, go, that was very wrong, throw him under a bus. Well, actually, she didn't have to throw him under the bus. He's already under the bus. He put himself under the bus. She just kicked him in a bit further.
And as if to add insult to injury, in Rishi Sunak's explanation himself, he said that the itinerary for these events was set weeks ago, before the start of the general election campaign, which means that he never had any intention to attend that event. Benedict?
Yeah, it's not a very good explanation, is it? It's just not particularly reassuring. What I think is really interesting about this is it's appalling optics. And it's happened because, actually, this is a government that is entirely focused on the press and how it looks in the press. And it was very keen, therefore, to get in that slot for that interview with ITV. And so focused was it on what it perceived as being the most important thing. But it missed the most open goal.
But it wasn't even a time-critical interview.
Exactly. Yeah. It completely lost sight of, in fact, what was important, possibly because this was not something that you can make a big show and dance about Rishi Sunak over. They thought, he'll be sort of obscured by the fact that there are other dare we say, more important things going on. And this is the problem when you have a government that is so obsessed with its media strategy that it loses sight of and therefore causes perhaps the biggest media blunder, certainly that I can remember.
Yeah.
That's how these sorts of things happened. A government that isn't focused on policy, it isn't really focused on anything apart from its image in the media. And this is how you get those sorts of mistakes.
From a cynically political point of view, to be really cynical about it, if you call a general election campaign and you know there is a 2-day period in the middle of that when everyone else is taking a back seat because you're the Prime Minister, there will be no campaigning in that 48 hours, the other side's going to have to shut up and you're going to get to prance about with Olaf Scholz and Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron and have your picture taken and be with the veterans and everything else, then that is one of the reasons, one of the calculations, one of the things your media team goes, hooray, those 48 hours are going to be good for us. And they've somehow managed to even screw that up. But even more importantly, I've reported on D-Day events for years, and I've been speaking to veterans for years. And even if you go to an event and you think, well, this is just it's a job, I have to do this, I have to go there, and it's something else, there is always a moment where someone says something, someone does something, where you're taken aback and you, gosh, and any normal human being is going to sense, the importance of what you're doing, even if it's only for a second. And Sunak had spent a day and a half at different veterans events and plainly hadn't heard a word of what was going on around him, had any sense of what he was laying the poppy wreaths in that for. He went through the motions. That's what it looks like. And I think there's been lots of comparisons with Gordon Brown's Gillian Duffy moment, talking about that bigoted woman. And it was a bit different. It appeared to be that someone who was civil in public was being a bit rude in private. There was a conversation, was she bigoted, was she not bigoted? People could argue about it. This has all been played out in public. It's blatant. It was planned and intended in advance that he was never going to give them any attention. And it's something where no one, even people who are saying, well, maybe he did have to come home for something, they still say it was wrong. There's no one saying that he was in the right.
It's interesting that you say, this isn't.
While we're talking, we'll just bring up some of the other papers, but go ahead, Ben.
It's interesting that you say that this isn't so much a gift for Farage, it's a gift for Starmer, because actually Farage has talked a lot about this, about how it's disgraceful, it's unpatriotic. Starmer, as far as I'm aware, hasn't really said very much at all, and it's given Starmer the opportunity to look incredibly statesmanlike by understanding that this is not the moment for political point scoring. He is not out there, giving it both guns. He just turned up, he met people, he understood that this was not about him, and my word, doesn't he look like the better person out of this as a result. But there is also this very strange phenomenon now of lots of Conservative or former Conservative voters saying this is the final straw, this is the thing, this is the straw that broke the camel's back because it's the disrespect. This, for me, from a personal perspective, I'm sat here looking at the state of our current armed forces. I'm saying, really? This is the moment that broke the camel's back? Actually, what's more disrespectful? Not turning up or leaving early from a remembrance event, or actually squandering the legacy of, the peace that those people won by underinvesting in our armed forces, getting us to a point where we have former defence ministers going on national radio saying we no longer have the industrial base to fight Russia if there were an invasion, where we have former defence ministers turning around and saying we might need to introduce conscription because we haven't actually staffed our armed forces properly. And I sit there and I go, really? This is the moment that broke the camel's back? Actually, I think there have been many things leading up to this where if defence is the important thing for you, the alarm bells were ringing for some time. Yeah,
but this is the point at which he's been rude to Grandad. That's what matters a lot.
Yes.
That really brings it home. But he's been terrible, despite what Johnny Mercer said today. Rishi Sunak has been pretty bad to veterans for the entirety of his time in office. He has refused...
Johnny Mercer was saying otherwise, that he'd been his big supporter.
Yeah, but he didn't manage to get veterans' ID cards to be voter ID in time. Although he announced a medal for nuclear veterans who actually won the peace, or secured the peace that was won by the guys at D-Day, he's refused 12 times to meet the veterans that I work with who've got evidence of crimes being committed against them by the British state. And he's just not able to, and it's a relatability thing. It's not about being wealthy. It's about being slightly just divorced from the rest of the planet and not being able to see what matters, not to you, but to somebody else.
But will he have done this on advice? There are some people saying his advisors need to be sacked and those around him are the real culprits.
Who employs his advisors? Who's in charge of them?
No, I take that point he is ultimately where the buck should stop. However, I think we all agree, as the Mirror says, it's over for Rishi Sunak. His political career is done. An awful lot of these people, anybody who's been paying attention to the efforts to stitch up selections by CCHQ of candidates for this election will notice that a lot of these people are advisors, or former advisors, either to Rishi Sunak or people close to him. These are clearly people with one eye on their own political futures. And if these are the sorts of people who plan on being MPs, and clearly, as most Tory MPs want to be Prime Minister or somebody very serious at some point, I think it's actually very right that we put a lot of scrutiny on the strategy, because these are the exact same people who will be trying to get into government in a couple of years' time. Who knows? Strange as it may seem, one day they might succeed. And I think they do need to be put under the spotlight to say, so what part did you play in all of this?
Yeah.
Why did you give the Prime Minister that advice? Do you really think this is a job that you should be doing?
The problem is they've been doing so badly for so long that Number 10's got this bunker mentality. Ministers can't get in to talk to Rishi about things. The MPs aren't able to influence and get into there to discuss and say what's going on in the party management or anything else. They just gather round and then they talk to themselves, and then they've decided what they think is important, and they're not relating it to the country at all. And it's beyond over. It was over some time ago. It's dragging out now. This is now a zombie Prime Minister with a rotting government that's dragging this festering corpse around the country on some kind of battle bus going, hey, vote for me.
You're saying it's
Wiltshire, over? In Wiltshire, where they shouldn't need convincing to vote Tory.
Don't sit on the fence, Susie. Say exactly what you think.
Oh, I just want... You know, the domestos of democracy needs to clean this up and get rid, because it smells bad.
You can tell she's a columnist, can't you? Look at these metaphors. It's fantastic.
Actually, I say my 8-year-old came up with the domestos of democracy.
Wow.
So that's actually
She's got a future.
More nepotism. I can't believe it.
Let's turn to the debate tonight, that seven-handed debate. And in the Times, they're still talking about the D-Day fiasco. And Penny Mordaunt didn't hold back her criticism, really, of Rishi Sunak.
She didn't, and I think Penny Mordaunt's got two things. I mean, everybody knows that Penny Mordaunt also would like to be leader of the Conservative Party. You know, she's stood twice to be, and if she survives, she will almost certainly do again. But that's the big question. If she survives, she is in an incredibly difficult situation where odds are, I would say, actually, she probably will lose her seat. She obviously comes from a sort of a naval background. Her constituency has, given that it's Portsmouth, obviously, a lot of links to the armed forces. I couldn't envisage a world in which Penny Mordaunt wasn't going to come out and, as Susie says, throw the Prime Minister slightly further under the bus that he was already under. She had to do that, not just for the state of the party, but for her own political skin. If she has any hope at all, this tonight was not so much a please vote for Rishi Sunak, he's not a bad guy kind of situation. This was as much an appeal, I think, directly to her constituents to say, I'm not Rishi Sunak, I'm separating myself from this.
I think it was mostly an advert for hairspray, because that
and a good one
helmet is astonishing. I mean, I didn't watch much of the debate, but when I did see anything of it, all I could look at, I wasn't listening to anything they said, I was looking at the hair. It's astonishing. It's like Bridget Jones in the first film when she's in Daniel Cleaver's soft top.
We shouldn't really comment on personal appearance, because
No,
we probably wouldn't if it were a male politician.
If a male came out with hair that bouffant, I definitely would.
OK, let's move on to actually the campaign trail. And in the Times, Rishi Sunak vowed to abolish stamp duty for the first time buyers.
No, he hasn't. It's rubbish. It's utter rubbish. So what they're doing now, because they have got all this problem, they are now kind of, as Dan Hodges, another one of your commentators, was saying on Twitter, that they're throwing everything at the manifesto now, just trying to move things on a little bit from the disaster we've just had. So there's this line that we're going to abolish stamp duty for first-time buyers and properties under £425,000. But Theresa May abolished stamp duty for first-time buyers in 2018 on properties under £300,000. She re-announced it in 2019, and then Boris Johnson mentioned it in 2019, and again in 2020. It's been a temporary measure for 6 years, and umpty-tumpty prime ministers who keep saying they're going to do this and you're going to make it permanent, and don't worry. And it has made no difference whatsoever to any first-time buyers, really, that anyone's noticed.
The Telegraph reporting that the new stamp duty policy makes permanent something which Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng introduced.
Well, you can literally, every single Conservative Prime Minister, no matter how brief, has tried to have this at the forefront. And the Telegraph says 200,000 households will benefit from this. Well, clearly it's not an an increase on the numbers that would already benefit it, because people already do benefit from it. But I would just sort of take this back slightly. Why is this so important? It's because there is a housing crisis in this country, especially for first-time buyers. Many people are struggling to get on the housing ladder. What was really, really evident from the debate, as far as I was aware, nobody touched upon that as an issue. It wasn't mentioned at all, and it is so core, so fundamental to so many of the economic and social issues that we have in this country. There is not enough housing, there is not enough building going on. None of the parties were prepared to touch it because they are too scared to address it and say to their voters, look, you are going to have houses where you don't want them,
well,
and that's tough.
Labour has said that.
Not during that debate.
No, but they have said that they'll have more planning and they'll loosen things up.
Michael Gove said that as well.
Yeah.
It went really well.
Yeah.
Benedict and Sophie, thank you. Sophie? Susie. Why am I calling you Sophie? Well, she's going to leave now. Thank you very much for the moment. Coming up, this on the front of the Mail, focusing on the desperate search and rescue efforts of health writer Dr. Michael Mosley. We'll be back.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. My most memorable story was, and still is, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Please, please do not hurt her. Please give our little girl back.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
For detectives, the first 48 hours after a murder are crucial in the search for clues. The public expects them to find Jill Dando's killer soon. The British detectives are planning to meet forensic experts, academics, and even witch doctors.
I remember the grimmest case, the Soham murders of schoolgirls Holly and Jessica. I felt I can't undo what's happened, but I can help explain it.
Ian Huntley was arrested and charged within a fortnight of the murders.
I've never murdered anyone. I've never raped anyone. What am I in jail for?
The parole board has to decide if Bronson needs to be kept locked up for the safety of the public. My biggest challenge was to persuade a jailed diamond thief to answer my letters. Martin Brunt, Sky News, at the Old Bailey.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and political commentator Benedict Spence. Let's take a look at this story in the Times, and this is about the cyber attack, this NHS hacking attack, presumed to be Russian or criminal cyber attack, and the effect that it's having on patients' health. Significant.
It's obviously something that you never want to think about, is that an IT failure or hack could end up in impacting the ability of the healthcare system to work. But this story talks about how blood transfusions have been affected. And I'll just read what it is that King's management sent out to medical staff. We are unable to perform any of the many automated processes and electronic safety checks that would normally do as part of standard issuing. Meaning that we cannot guarantee antibody history, special requirements and full unit compatibility. So just think about what that entails. Blood transfusion is, of course, essential when it comes to all kinds of operations. It has a massive knock-on effect. And given that it is one of the constants that we've spoken about for so long, delays in NHS care, be it critical care, be it cancer care, all sorts of different things, this is the exact worst kind of situation that you could possibly envisage. An extra sort of added delay that also puts immediate lives at risk. It creates an awful sort of bottleneck of a situation where people could die as a result of this. And again, we have to talk about people will talk about things like NHS efficiency, how much money is there for the health service. The fact of the matter is, the NHS's IT systems are not fit for purpose. They are outdated, and they have been for a very long time. And this is one of those issues that always is brought up as a sort of a political football. Whose fault is it? You know, this NHS service in this country works slightly worse than this one, be it Wales, be it wherever. Ultimately, what is required is a major injection of cash to effectively update the system. Otherwise, we are going to continue to be vulnerable to external and malicious attacks like this, because this is a state actor. This is exactly the sort of thing that you'd be doing to basically test our systems. And just think about this. This is at a time of peace, albeit during a general election. Imagine if we were at war, or imagine if this was in the middle of another pandemic, that a hostile nation could just go at the press of a button, not literally the press of a button, but could cause so much carnage on a much larger scale. And that's what we have to think about. This is not necessarily, you know, an effort to disable us, but if it can be done on this sort of scale, the knock-on effects are catastrophic.
Part of the issue is this isn't hacking NHS, it's hacking an outside lab which provides blood services to multiple NHS hospitals, because to save money they have outsourced to someone, and so therefore it is outside the NHS. It is more vulnerable perhaps, but once that outside source then gets attacked, multiple hospitals are affected and thousands more patients if you just went after one hospital.
Susie, we're just running out of time. I wanted to bring in our final story, and that is the continuing search for Dr. Michael Mosley on the Greek island of Symi.
Obviously, it's very sad. Dr. Michael Mosley is somebody who I think a lot of people are aware of, and always comes across as a sort of very upbeat, very well-informed, a very jovial person with what you might call a very good bedside manner. Obviously, I think everybody hopes that he is found, but given what has been reported about the circumstances on the island, the temperatures, his situation, one hopes that this happens very fast, because there is a very short window.
Benedict and Susie, thank you very much. We'll see you at the top of the hour.